Hello and welcome to Talk Art. I'm Sally Rain and I will be your host as we delve into the world of the artist and experience the art that's all around us. Our guest is Susan Kraft, and Susan is an abstract and figurative artist who primarily paints on canvas, wood, and paper. From 2002 to 2007, she owned and ran Art 21 in Palo Alto. It was the largest gallery on the peninsula at the time. Art 21 was a focal point of fine art, live jazz, and poetry readings. Currently, she paints in her Redwood City studio and is president of the South Bay Area chapter of Women's Caucus for Art. So welcome, Susan.
Well, thank you, Sally.
Yeah, and you were also the host for Talk Art before I was.
I was indeed.
Yes. So welcome back.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your background in art. Where did you start and what are some of your influences? So from childhood, how did you progress?
Well, I think like a lot of artists, you know, you pick your favorite topics, and I loved horses. I rode horses, so I painted horses, and I painted dogs and trees, and then I got into people, and then I went to college and expanded, you know, took art history and so on. But after a year and a half of art school, I realized this was not a good thing for a single mother to do. So I dropped out of art school and looked around for something else that I should do that'd be a little more responsible for a single young mother.
What inspires you to create art these days? What is it that motivates you?
Well, currently, as time went on, I stopped painting the landscapes and the horses and so on. Although I did that well into my adulthood, I started to become more, more aware of current events. I was always aware of current events, but it hadn't gone into my art. It hadn't been expressed through art. And recently, current events have just been flowing out and have gone onto the canvases, and I'm not working at it. I'm not trying because it's new for me to be painting about current events, and because it gets people, some people are upset, the emotions are higher from the viewer. So either they're very happy to see it and very encouraged, or they're very upset about it.
That I can believe. Well, art is meant to create conversation and to disturb you a little bit, I think.
I think so.
Definitely. Okay. So you brought some images with you that are recent abstractions. Is that
correct?
True? Well, let's take a look at those now, some of your abstract images.
This one is Spring in Palo Alto. This one, actually, it's from a series I did many years ago during Art 21. However, it inspired more current pieces, which you'll see next. I was inspired to paint another piece similar to Spring in Palo Alto on watercolor paper, and then I attached it to a canvas. And then I added a series of photographs from the iPhone, and I wanted to do a piece on patterns that I saw currently. So if we look at it more closely, you'll see that the patterns are little stickies, and those stickies were on the Apple Store a couple of weeks after Steve Jobs died. And the stickies say things like "I sad," or "Goodbye, Steve," or "Human engineering." Things just having the personal notes about Steve. This one is called Chicken Gumball. And this is also current events, and it's a painting of a farm field, and I abstracted the farm field. So one way is looking at the horizon, and the other way, as you get closer to the bottom of the canvas, it looks like an aerial view from a plane. But in the foreground is a gumball filled with chicks, and in the background I took black paint on top of the farm area where the buildings are, and then I sprayed it a solvent so the paint dripped, and it made it look grimy because I wanted to talk about factory farming. And the chicks are treated like live food, or like they're already food and they're being dispensed. I've seen movies and read stories about how live farm animals are being treated like they're not living creatures. and it's very disturbing to me. So this is a very concentrated image of that emotional feeling I have about it and thoughts I have about it.
Yeah, it definitely looks dark and the dripping, sort of melting. So you not only are an artist, you have been a gallery owner in Palo Alto. Art 21 was a very successful, large gallery, and so
this is for my advice for artists. If you'd like to be in a gallery, and it's a lot of work to be in a gallery, you know.
Yes.
All right, it's a relationship, and it's a complicated relationship because you need to make sure they're paying attention to you, and you need to pay attention to them. Mm-hmm. And they're human beings, so they want to be treated with respect. They want to like you, and you want to like them because you're going to spend time with them. So before you engage and sign a contract with them, you want to make sure you like the space and you like the other artists they pick and you like the way they have their shows. So you need to go and do some reconnaissance work and go to as many shows as you can, as often as you can. Because if that's what you're going to be, a gallery artist, you have to live a gallery artist life, and that's go there and learn how to meet and greet, be comfortable meeting people. A gallery artist does not want, a gallery owner doesn't want an artist who can't say hello to people and stick their hand out and say, hi, nice to meet you. My name is, and this is my work, and let me tell you about my work.
Right.
You know, if you just stand in the corner.
You have worn many hats in the Bay Area, and you're a wonderful artist and have been in lots of shows. Briefly tell us a little bit about the South Bay Area chapter of the Women's Caucus for Arts.
That also came as a surprise to me. I was kind of like I guess I was a feminist without really trying to be. You know, when I dropped out of art school, I went down to Kentucky because I liked horses. I told you that, and I broke race horses.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I went to Alaska to become a geophysicist, you know, and I was out there. I was the second woman to graduate with a bachelor's in geophysics from Fairbanks, Alaska. And I climbed mountains, you know, you know, not with mountain gear, just because that's what they did.
So you were a feminist in your life.
But I didn't set out to say, I'm going to do this because this is what a woman needs to be able to do. I just did it because I didn't really see a boundary that I needed to break. It just was there because I like to do it. So when people say, are you a feminist? I guess in my life I am, but I'm not an activist.
Right.
So all of a sudden...
But you're involved in the Women's Caucus for the Arts. What is that?
Well, I want to tell you why I got there, because these paintings, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the paintings I started painting, these current news paintings about women's issues, and they approached me and said, you need to join us, our local chapter. Your work would fit very well. We'd like to have your work involved in what we're doing.
So these paintings are about women wearing burqas.
Yeah.
And you quote a very famous artist, Francis Bacon, in them, and sort of in the backgrounds and the ambiance and some of the colors that you choose. So let's take a look at some of those images now.
Okay. He did several pieces. He did a whole series of these men in boxes, and there were simple white lines that gave the viewer a feeling that you were in the same room with them. That's what some of the reviewers say. I think it's to show that the artist was showing that the person he was painting was confined in a box. So
yeah, either physical or spiritual. I mean,
correct.
Colors.
Right.
So
exactly.
Let's take a look at your painting and see how they relate.
This one is called Unseen Unheard, and it's a woman in one of the severest burqas, and she is also in a room, but using the same lines that Francis Bacon did, except in her room she has a window, which is also very simply done, similar to Francis Bacon's style. And for me, I saw her as being able to, if she could turn around and look, she'd see there was an escape, or at least a window to look out and see the rest of the world. But she's looking forward, so I don't know if she'll ever do that or not. Some of the other pieces I did after that, and this was the first one I did in this series. This one, she's gone. She still has the window, but you can barely see it in this slide. But she's basically she's shrunk down to a skeleton because she's still in that room. She can't get out, and she's covered up, and no one can see her, and she's not emoting and not able to do what she's been put on this earth to do. These burqas are really symbolic. Yes, they're bad, and they withhold women from life, and their society. But I really painted them more as symbolic gestures. I felt like I had done that to myself, especially with my art. Right? I covered myself in the science cloak, and didn't allow my art self to come out. This one is the face behind the mask. It's a rather large piece. It's here on the set, and it is a woman who's got her high heels on, and they're peeking out from underneath the burqa. And then I put a big face behind it as well, and it was a Chuck Close style of face. It was very large, and I wanted to say there's a real person under there. You know, see me and recognize. You know, if you can't see me, just know that there is a person who likes some style and has a personality.
Lots of emotion in the colors that you chose and the style.
And that also has the black, runny, grimy look. And I think it's more of a black tears. It was more of a surprise, actually. I thought it was going to be just a technique that abstract artists use to have a two-dimensional surface with the runniness, and it turned out to be a nice surprise. Yeah. This one is a hidden life wearing heels, and it's a similar one. It's an older woman's face, because I wanted to show you might end up being underneath your cloak, whatever you cloak yourself in, for your whole life.
But the colors are so vibrant, and your burqa is what you cloak yourself in. Or what you have the women cloak themselves in is so vibrant. Yes. You can't see the woman, but you can see the outer.
You can get pretty
picture.
Fancy.
Yeah.
I got a couple of degrees in geophysics. That's pretty fancy.
Yes.
I had a lot of people fooled. And this one is, this was the last piece I did in this series, and it took me the longest, actually. I worked on it and reworked it a few times. And this is a young woman as a bride, barefoot bride, who walked over a burning bridge, or she burned her bridges. I'm not sure or maybe that's hell, I'm not sure. And she's got a cloak over her arm, so that's a burqa, or maybe it's the Virgin Mary, and her, is different, the opposite colors. But she definitely is a bride, and she definitely left, and she's waiting, and she's thinking she's going to go to the right, but she's still looking to the left. She's still looking behind her. And if she looked over her shoulder, she'd see the path over the stream and up the mountain to enlightenment.
So you can see through the window now.
Yeah.
Yes, so
That's
it's
right.
somewhat of a personal process for you as well through these paintings.
I think when I finally finished it, I said to my good friend from the gallery, I think that's me. That was Jill Andre, and she said, of course it is, Susan. We all knew that.
Well, those are beautiful paintings. Thank you. Yes. You try to create emotion in your paintings, and tell us a little bit about the challenges that you face when you have an emotion and you want to paint it.
The challenge, well, that's really a hard question to answer. I know we've talked about it earlier. It's, I will try with what I do is I actually get into a mode of, like a metaphysical mode when I'm painting, and that comes out the best. I have a feeling that viewers can tell when you're just dialing it in, because you're just doing you know how to use the work, you use your paints and your brushes. But if you are actually emotional when you're painting, the viewers can tell, and they react. It's almost like a recording. You know, you can tell when somebody's singing with real emotion versus just like going through the scales. And you react, your scalp gets tingly, and you well up, and your eyes well up. Yeah. I've seen people cry at paintings in my gallery, and I know what the story is behind those paintings, and it's a one-for-one match. But that person has to be on that wavelength. The viewer has to be on the wavelength of the...
receptive to it. So but that's the intent, and the color choices, and the images. So they're beautiful work.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being on Talk Art again. It's been a pleasure talking about your art.
Thank you.